the sentient of breath, caught with a monarch wing behind glass. So many ghosts left lipstick on mouths, plastic like fool's gold in rivers where we'll return to collect tin cans, dimes, a memory locked in a factory of keepsakes. Give us relief from the rain, from the house that keeps being sad with leaving. This privy of space to dodge bullets of remorse behind a street lamp, behind the moon glow, as if God's operator were eavesdropping on the tarmac of speech itself, where two lovers are saying goodbye, one heavy breath furnishing the empty room of never. Am I just supposed to read one poem and then we go to the next person? I think it's probably a good way to do it, right?
You have time for another one, but it was basically about 4 minutes each person.
Okay, I'll read one more. Cuckoo clock. Cuckoo clock. Little house on the wall of hours, with hands knitting minutes into a one-sleeved sweater of sorrow. I threaded longing into a sickly twining and went flat out, stir crazy in. Itinerant as the day was long, crossed into a glossary of sounds, a stick running the picket of my rib cage, bees making a racket behind wood paneling. I was sure his eyes hid under the diagonal stairwell, hid under the bed like the sleek new bra lost behind a door. The glitch to waiting. Waiting is the wind, the force that pushed a pin into my skin. The stuffed toys held dust, bellowed secrets, luggage departing on a train. Then the rabid hour took aim. An arrow, a long shadow drawn back to his bicycle, a voice lost to the horns and traffic. His last word, a dirge, a drum, a clapper in my aching heart. The bird paying rent with song. Thank you.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Thank
Okay, we're going to move on to Wendy. Wendy, you ready? I have to make sure that it's a long list of folks here. So Wendy, you are unmuted.
Okay. Well, like Cynthia, I just want to thank Ron Starbuck so much. Good grief. All he's done. This gorgeous book, I don't know, can't say it very well, but some of you know it. He did the most beautiful job designing this book and got us just got a rave review in Publishers Weekly of all things, thanks to Ron. We've also had several other wonderful reviews, and some of you here, bless you, were at the book launch that we had in January that Natalia hosted. I hope she can join us later. So I'm grateful, super grateful to Ron and and to all of you for support and to be with you all. At least we can do this, right? At least we can. Gloss is a strange book. It's composed of very short syllabic poems that are meditating on a Chinese scroll that show a man going upstream in a little boat. It also includes prose poems and long-line lineated poems. There are a couple of epigraphs, and I'm just going to read one of them for you. There are 3 epigraphs in the book, but this is the one I'm going to read tonight. It's by Claudia Rankin from Citizen. You can't put the past behind you. It's buried in you. It's turned your flesh into its own cupboard. Gloss was a book that I had to write after being together with my 2 sisters, Patricia McConnell and Liza Pyatt. We began talking about our mother. I grew up, my sisters and I grew up, I was the oldest. Anyway, that's more than you ever needed. Grew up mostly in Arizona. When I was growing up, we didn't have money. We were in tract houses. My parents were always in debt. Later on, they got more comfortable. About the time I got married to Larry Barker, my first husband, then they got more comfortable. So my younger sisters had a little more comfortable than I did. But anyway, what was so strange was that my mother came from unbelievable wealth. She came from this fabulous British family. And it just didn't make sense. And I would ask my mother questions and she would avoid answering. And this book is a way of trying to resolve, trying to understand her background, how it happened, what went on. And I might want to read the last of the 3 epigraphs before I get into the poems. Here's the last of the 3 epigraphs. I don't very much care what people do, as long as they don't do it in the street and frighten the horses. King Edward VII. So these are poems trying to come to terms with my mother's very unusual, very wealthy British background that just was like a foreign language for me, completely foreign language for me. I only met those grandparents a few times in my life. Okay, here's one of the scroll poems. Along a river. Along a river, you will know upstream from downstream. Off these sloped banks, clumped water hyacinths, mossy strands provide clues. No movement other than scarlet dragonflies flitting the surface, mosquitoes. Beyond, a source you must find. One of the prose poems, the RMS Queen Mary. Docked since '67 in Long Beach, the same liner Mom sailed in '39 from England to marry my father. Relic of a past the well-heeled now are recreating, cruise being the upscale way for travel, like the tour labeled Alaska's Glorious Inside Passage in 8 days, or the one advertised as Wonders of the Mekong, 10 days down South Asia's amazing river. But the Queen Mary was not designed for this sort of travel, rather to get you from Southampton to New York in less than a week, or from one life to another. Within a year, Mom had lost most of her Britishisms, but not all. Oh, you Americans, she'd shudder at us daughters, though she carried on with Thanksgiving and the 4th of July. The phrase carry on holds more weight than hand luggage. Alone on the Queen Mary, not part of any migration. No soft-bosomed granny, no jocular uncles to keep her afloat. Those glossy first-class cabins were kept spotless, then repainted, reupholstered, refurbished. Not a trace of her.
I have to unmute myself, Wendy.
What?
I just had to unmute myself because.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So, do you have another poem? Is that?
No, I'll save it for that's enough for now.
Okay. All right. Great.
Yeah.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. So we're going to move on to Lisa.
Yes.
So you're unmuted at this point, and I'm going to mute Wendy and myself. So
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Ron. I'm holding a copy of my newly birthed, beautiful book with art on the front of it by Leaky Barnstone's mother. I'm so grateful to the way that St. Julian Press nurtures the poets that the press prints. Thank you, Ron. I'm going to start out with 3 poems from the book, and they sort of set the stage for the people, the places, and the obsessions, for the most part, in my poems. Words at hand. There's only one word in here that you need to know, and that's Moab, M-O-A-B, which stands for the mother of all bombs. Words at hand. I want to write something exquisite and tender, but those are not the words at hand. The words at hand are mismatched socks, lint, and dog hair, homework, and the flu. I want the pigeons out of my yard. They bully the smaller birds, the male cardinals hopping along behind their mates to feed them. I want the bellies of the females filled. I don't want the words Moab, refugee, and rape, unemployment, or cancer to grow sticky in the lives they invade. I don't want to be petty about my desires or worry about money in the presence of my wealth. I want big things too, and not just for me. Shelter and prayer, friends meeting in the street with a hug, the ornamental plums in bloom a little longer so that everyone has time to see them before their blousy fall. The daughter. Every year, satellites wobble and flare. Oh, every year, satellites wobble and fall, flare like a matchtip and disappear. But most junk in space stays in space, despite Earth's gravitational pull. The daughter rushes to be born, to break her mother's orbit, only to return to the circle of her arms. They stare at each other across the breast's warm globe, one's eyes deep evening blue, the other's full of stars. And I'll close this set with the title poem, The Long Grass. The long grass is mown. The long grass is mown but not yet raked. The cut stalks interlace and dry in a net above the green. Everything is green. Everything is green and slightly sour. The girls gallop and gallop, pretending they have horses. The girls gallop. They are horses. They run the field of red clover and rye, inflorescence above, a sweetness within. Everything is sweet. Everything is sweet and slightly green. At the bottom of the trough, pale algae waves. They run the pump to fill the tank. They dip their faces in the cold. By summer's end, they are bored and tan. By summer's end, they are young women. Right now, they wander to Salem Free Church to weave graveyard flowers into their manes. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I am going to scoot down here. I say scoot because I'm scrolling up and down and I've got to get to Melissa and unmute her. So Melissa, you should now be unmuted.
Can you hear me?
I hear you. Does everybody else hear you? Shake your head.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we'll go on to Melissa. And let me scroll back up here to make sure that I've got myself.
Oh, me now? Okay.
Yeah,
So,
you know.
I thought you were still doing something. Okay, so I'm reading my first set from this book, and this is the new one. Oh, what am I doing? Thank you, Ron. I guess I was saving it for the end. No, thank you so much, Ron. Really, you're amazing, and I just sort of echo what everyone else has already said. You make beautiful books, and you're so supportive and wonderful. And I'm really happy to be here with all of you right now. And the readings that I've heard so far, I'm just incredibly moved by your words. Y'all are beautiful poets. So this is Like a Bird with 1,000 Wings, and this is my most recent book from St. Julian Press. It's a chapbook, and it is based on the musical composition Conference of the Birds by Christopher Theophanides, and his is based on the allegorical Sufi poem by Attar. So it's got several levels and generations of inspired by here. So I don't know how familiar everyone is with the story, but just a really sort of basic overview is that the birds of the world gather and decide that they need a leader. And so they fly over different valleys, and each one is a stage in sort of getting to know themselves better. And they get to the end of the journey and discover that the sort of divine bird that they have been looking for is actually themselves. So I'm going to read, and the hoopoe bird is not the leader that they're searching for, but the leader who takes them across the valleys. So the first one is called When the Birdsong Rings Human. When the birdsong rings human, the hoopoe bird forgets its tongue, like a time traveler accidentally leaving a glove in a year that hasn't happened. The tongue wanders strange gray streets, its sour and sweet buds lit up with the hoopoe's hunger, glowing like a jellyfish in the rain. Now the tongue knows no house can promise safety, not the sheath of mouth, not even the body, which laughs at the body of time, stretched like a poolside lizard across dimensions. The tongue bellows for the hoopoe across the green. The hoopoe hears what he thinks is an echo, not blazing, but persistent, ever present, a little fuzzy, like a radio that's not coming in well, or the hum and buzz of street lamps and telephone wires he knew in that other world. Everything the bird means to say turns ancient at the root and falls off, because God is not a clock nor a sundial reaching forward with narrow arms. God is a million tiny pieces, like glitter or destiny, breaking flesh into astonishment, breaking pain into daggers of light. And I'm going to read one more. This is called There's a Brightness Folded into Every Bird. And this is the one that's based on the Valley of Quest. There's a brightness folded into every bird, but the bird doesn't know it. The bird is 30 birds who soared out of dreaming to invent sky. 30 birds flying in the formation of a bird. God tells them, open, O moonbeak, O silver black, O sliver of luck. And the bird says, break me until I'm whole. God says, empty, and the bird spills a splendor of jewels from their 30 beaks into the valley. Don't think I'm a diamond, God says, find me, and hands the bird a map back to the inside of its own bone, then disappears. But the bird doesn't understand the question. 30 birds split into 1,000 that search under everything, stone, fabric, sun face, gold, until they find no God. Now the beak yells, take me, I have no reason. And an arch of wing lifts sun up towards light, and a thump under the chest answers yes, and yes, and yes, and yes.
Melissa, can you hear me?
I can now, yes.
Okay, I just took myself off mute. Would you say a little bit, or just give a little bit of background about the work that you're doing with Christopher? And I just sent a link to Chris's website, so
Oh, wonderful.
that. And but he's online with us, so we should give some acknowledgement to his.
Great, I would love to. I was trying to stay in my 4 minutes, you know. So,
Yeah, I understand.
yeah.
We'll pass that, but that's okay.
Yeah, okay, great. So yes, Chris is a composer, and he is here in Houston right now. He's from Houston. He currently teaches at Yale and lives in New Haven, but he's not there right now, obviously. What else do I want to say about him? So basically what happened is that this piece was being performed by a group called the Argus Quartet. And they decided that they wanted poems to be read between the movements. And so they told Chris about this idea, and he thought that it would be great to have new poems instead of using the atar. So basically, I just listened to his music, which is incredible. If you don't know his work, I highly recommend going and finding it or following the links that Ron sent. And I just listened to them over and over and wrote these poems that were responses that are not intended to be narrative so much as like little pictures or snapshots that try to capture the feel or the essence of the different pieces. And his pieces are all each very different from each other, and each one has its own sort of personality or character. So I should say not pieces, but movements within the piece, because each one is based on one of the valleys.
So Chris, you're unmuted, so you could say hi if you wanted to.
Hi everyone, great to be with you all. It's really good to be here. And thanks, Melissa. That is those are such beautiful works, and every time I hear them, I feel more and more lucky that they're kind of synthesized into this performative whole. And Ron, the book is just gorgeous. And thank you for printing some of the music in there too.
Oh, you're quite welcome.
Sorry, Chris, do you want to tell them about Saturday?
Sure, very briefly, the quartet, all of performance has been completely decimated, collaborative performance in this period, of course, because nobody can be together. But Argus has had a really neat thing happen, which is one of the performing series in New Jersey is going to do a remote live concert where they basically, all the players play their parts individually and line up together with a click track that only they hear, so that you can hear them playing together. And Melissa and I have been interviewed for that, and also the poetry in a different form is going to intersperse each of the movements. So that'll happen. It's the Argus String Quartet, ARGUS, and you could probably find through their website a link to that event, which is a free event on Saturday evening.
Wonderful, thank you.
Thanks,
okay.
Rob.
I'm going to move as quickly on to the second set. Did I interrupt you, Melissa?
Oh, no, I was just...
Okay, all right. So the second set is going to start with Wendy. So let me make sure that I've got Wendy not muted. I have to find her in my long list of folks here. Okay, Wendy, you are unmuted at this point.
Okay, I will read one of the scroll poems and then another prose poem. This particular scroll poem is called Maybe His Boat. These are all in syllabics, by the way, 4 or 5 syllables a line. Maybe his boat is drifting back toward the mouth of the river, or he's grown tired from the long push, and the banks down farther lure him with the fine silt of easy slopes, silky tendrils. Perhaps under the mountain's mist, something hides he fears he will reach. This particular prose poem is called Latent Image. Before she died, Mom pulled that photo out of the album, tore it to shreds. The one that showed her at 7, naked, posed like a nymph, a statue on the lawn. Grandfather's insisting she strip in front of the servants and sit like that, her legs folded to one side, her heads bent in the opposite direction. His little nymph, stilled in that photo, caught by silver particles, the standard black and white photographic process introduced in 1871. A photo's final image, metallic silver embedded in the gelatin coating. Stills, we say, stopped action, a single frame of a film. Yet I never knew Mom stilled until she died, her trim body beneath a sheet. Always moving, vacuuming every crumb of dust to be sucked into the guts of the Electrolux, its bag emptied into the garbage and gone. After dinner, Ed Sullivan on TV, her hands working a needle or scissors, her feet joggling, toes wriggling. Daytime, her sewing machine's roar, her fingers zipping the fabric toward the needle, her foot pressing the pedal full speed. And driving, always over the limit, as if to say, get me out of here. Silver atoms, freed when silver salts meet the light, form an image that's stable. Once the film's developed, it's bathed in a chemical fixer. Clean water clears the fixer from the print, and the latent image becomes permanent. The story she told me long after I'd moved away, how, when at 13, she asked her mother what she should do about the black hairs spiraling in her armpits. And Granny said, "Father can help you with that." And he did, in the shower, every week, shaving her.
Thank you, Wendy. Lovely. Okay, in the second set, we're gonna move on to Lisa.
I've unmuted myself.
Wonderful. I love it when people do that.
So this second set, thank you. There's an arc of poems that runs through my collection where I consider the myth of Demeter and her daughter Persephone, sort of taking from my starting point the idea that this mother-daughter relationship is played through eternity. So many of the poems are about that relationship of the daughter pulling away or being pulled away from the mother. If you remember, Persephone is given over to her uncle Hades by her father in an arrangement that neither mother nor daughter agreed to. Demeter went a little nuts, searched everywhere on the earth for Persephone, and the couple were finally reunited, although Persephone goes back to Hades for 3 months out of the year, the winter. And the series is subtitled sort of In the Bright World. In the Bright World, Demeter works in the yard. She bends the jonquils to the ground and they bounce back and forth in response. The hosta's curled tongues are up and the newly seeded grass casts a light green across the bald yard. Everywhere, the work of her hand, hours tending and pruning and starting from seed, and everywhere the work left undone. Her trowel rings in the soil and brings up a porcelain doll head, thimble small and grubbed with dirt. Nearby, her daughter builds a teepee for her Barbies, clipping branchlings from branches with a pair of old loppers, wild-haired and singing. In the next poem, I should give a small trigger alert that it contains instances of violence against women, several of them. And unfortunately, they were all pulled from the news. In the bright world, Demeter tried to teach her daughter caution when she was young, to show her simple rules to keep girls safe. No earbuds on the bus. Keep your midriff covered and your distance from angry people and fools. In the end, it didn't matter. He climbed through her bedroom window. He groped her on the crowded train. He told her every other girl had done it to get the job. He uploaded her pictures, chained her to the radiator, locked her in the office, pushed her down behind the dumpster. He gave her drugs meant for horses so she could not move or scream. He took her into custody. He took her by the hand. He told her he'd be gentle. He tore her shirt from her breast. He told her she didn't deserve better. He beat her and addicted her and sold her to his friends. He picked her out from the larger group and followed her home from school. He raped her while her parents chanted prayers in the next room. With his horses, Hades snatched her screaming into the misty gloom. She was slut-shamed by her friends. It was all her fault. And that quote is from the hymn to Demeter, Homer's Homeric hymn to Demeter. And one more poem out of that series, because I can't end it there. In the bright world, a coda, the mother tells her daughter she's writing a poem in which the mother is the earth goddess. So I've got some power here, the daughter responds, laughing and kissing her mother's brow. And this is the sweetness of their love in a nutshell, as they say, the meaty fear in the mother's heart. And this is how they crack, even when happy together, because the mother is saying, you will suffer and be lost, and the daughter hears, I am a goddess too. Thank you. And I'm going to mute myself.
Thank you, Lisa. And Melissa is up next, so I'm going to unmute her.
Ah, excellent. So I'm going to read 3 poems, and I'm reading new work and work that's not in any collection right now, because this is a chapbook and I don't want to just read every poem in it. So this is called To Be With Trees. And I think the only thing you really need to know is that the line, God loves your eyes because they made them this beautiful color, is actually all one word. So to be with trees. I dreamed of trees with blue veins and a forest full of wilting. And there, all my Southern girl self, full of no thank yous, full of you first, and go ahead and have the last piece of cake. I want that last piece of cake. Dreamed the trees made me my own tort, and I could have the whole thing. My sisters, the trees, they said, come now, sit, eat. They had blue veins in the forest full of wilting, and I cried. There were no forks. They said my hands were fork enough. And when I tried to say please, the trees said my eyes were please. And they said my mouth was thank you. And the trees cried too. They had beautiful eyes for crying, a color I had never seen. So I named it. God loves your eyes because they made them this beautiful color. Now, anyone who ever saw the color would think of the trees and the meaning of the trees, which was to be. Okay, the next poem, I'm not sure if this warrants a trigger warning or not, but it involves some dogs getting hit by a car, so that's that. Because death bolts illuminate the wonderstorm is the title of the poem. Cruel, the highway that took the dogs. I've seen its shoulders convulse gently in the crying of nightfall, the way a teenaged girl can be both vicious and vulnerable. It doesn't like what it has done, and I don't like to say it. Sometimes I hold a kaleidoscope to my beloved's eye and ask him to never look at anything again but me. How can I trust a world that hasn't yet honored the softness in his pupil? Is it possible to protect those we love, to protect anyone? I plant plum trees in his heart. I devour his fruits to the pit. Sometimes love is a stay against insanity. The dogs, it was my fault. Trying to help, I scared them into the rush. I live it over and over, the way a body can spill like sunlight from its skin. And as Lisa said a minute ago, I'm not going to leave you there. So one short last poem in this set, it's called When the Drunk Guy Sent an Injured Baby Goldfinch to the Wildlife Rehab by Uber. My kid DM'd me 2 smileys, laughing tears, and the note, "This is something you would do." And I don't know if that meant the drunk part or the goldfish alone in the back seat part, but I think it's possible life may just be God telling a series of knock-knock jokes. So I run to the door and answer. And when I get there, a golden flower blooms in my chest. So I call it laughter. And I delight in how my kid takes the time to message me. So a bouquet of silver flowers blooms in my chest, and I name it Having a Kid Who DMs Me. And another bouquet of flowers blooms in my chest, so I pluck them and hand them to a homeless man, and they regrow. And I pluck them and hand them to a bird's nest, and they grow again in the air around me. So I dance under falling blossoms on a picnic table at the park and send a video of it to everyone I know. And my kid is the first to respond. And I am 1,000 barrels of wine pouring myself into the world.
Thank you, Melissa. We're going to go on to Cynthia, and I'm going to unmute Cynthia now.
Okay. I'm so enjoying all your poems. Thank you so much. It's really lovely to hear your books, and just to feel like pressmates is pretty cool too. I think we can really support each other. It's really nice. One of my missions in this book was to try to take God back from religion. I've never really had one lick of religious training in my childhood. My mom was divorced, but I was raised a cultural Jew, and we, you know, set the table nicely on Passover and had relatives over. But I never really knew the reason behind the holidays until, of course, much later when I was older and did my own investigating. But I feel like a spiritual person. I'm not sure where God is placed in my life, and I guess that's one of the reasons why I wrote this book. There's a lot of titles in the book that have God in it, and God becomes kind of an object of various ways and incarnations throughout the book. And this poem, I'm going to read these 2 poems together because I think they're kind of married together. This one is called God is a Library. God is a library. If you look under G in the card catalog, a hunched over landlady will rent you a space made of dust, albeit a little domain of quiet, where the rent is cheap and so is the debt, and silence is not morbid. On these premises, text and rhetoric mix a sexy playground for words. Exquisite human machine of pathos and debris allowed the pages to be set on letterpress, then the ink bled and seeped into a refinery of senses. All the kids played hopscotch on a city street. We're polar opposites on a stage of belief, fact, and faith. Yes, Borges digressed for an atheist and an aleph. Delinquent, these prophets and scholars broke the dress code in favor of out of fashion souls. Two students knock knees to make contact, egg to sperm, pen to pulp. Ideas took flight to where our better angels reside, where chairs are stacked on tables at the end of the day. And this poem I consider kind of a companion piece. I also write a lot about mental health. I hate the word mental illness. I try not to use it because I think that's just one of those sexy terms that gets people's attention. I like to use the word mental health because that's something that we all are embody as our mental health and deal with it daily. For me to say mental illness is, other people have that. So this is called God is a Medicine Cabinet. This is egregious. The mind's parlor is being wooed before breakfast, even before hitting the sticky gymnasium floor. The keys to your ethos held accountable in a drowning pool of munitions, swerving on this slick road like mood hoodlums on the lam. You're offered a cigarette on the front lines to come back and report on the internal conflict. Yes, every day is triage. You are the wedge between East and West. You are someone else's war chest. The pharmacist widow sanctioned pills like beads in a rosary. Every day you are a cloud held up by toothpicks. Battle weary and bootleg to the nth. Every suitcase holds crimped labels implying you have filled out many papers and forms. You've crossed boundary lines while red sirens howl with the dogs. On 2 feet, you landed here, a cotton knoll down a lane of pretend. That moment when as a kid, you learned how to swallow and let go. Thank you. That's good for my round.
Thank you, Cynthia. You're getting applause. The next reader up, and this is the beginning of the third set, is Melissa. And then we'll follow with her with Lisa, Cynthia, and then Wendy will end it up for us. We're gonna go past time, but I think that's fine. I don't want to deny anybody their chance to read and share. So bear with us and stay with us. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm reading 3 short poems again. The first one is from this collection, I Ate the Cosmos for Breakfast, which is my other book with St. Julian Press, another gorgeous cover, as Ron does. This is called Daughter. It's for my daughter, Rosalind. Because I was a cave, and you were the bird that flew through my hollows. When they bathed the pain away, the light on your face looked like peace after a long and onerous war. I knew then what it meant to conjure fire from two sticks, to be an ocean giving life to a wave, to invent the wheel and its axle, unwind torque, create a perfect language from gurgles and sighs. Your body was a new and sacred space. I was a universe cooling after a great expanse. And because bright cells clung together to be you, I could believe I built the ark that saved humanity. And animals walking 2 by 2, that I'm the one who sat beneath the Bodhi tree and begot the sacred fig of enlightenment. I tell you, Athena sprung from my own split head, because emergence is a teaching, because your hands and feet were softer than sand, because before there were canyons or valleys or lakes or winds, you curled your hand around my finger and with your touch delivered the all. Okay, so the next poem is called Dear Sky, Please Wear Your Necklace Made of Stars. It's a new poem. Dear sky, please wear your necklace made of stars to my wonderment. I will bring you 1,000,000 pieces of light that I gathered from other people's eyes, and also white flowers from both funeral and wedding arrangements. People like to cry when they feel too much. It's how eyes keep from drowning. I want you to be the first to know. I took out a mortgage on a cave full of bats so I could dream upside down, but I only saw angels flying sideways. Now I can hear my heartbeat in other people's chests. Dear sky, there are prisms in your eyes so you can meet us everywhere. I'll bring the punch and cupcakes if you bring the infinite reach of possibility and home reels of the universe. Listen, sky, this could go on forever, so I'm just going to stop talking now. But please know I love you, and I think you're beautiful, even if I don't show it as often as I should. One more new one. I wanted to leave you kind of in a funny, silly place. This is called Modus Operandi. I put ranch dressing on the Greek salad. I stand in my front yard in the rain and yell, I'm the biggest waterfall in this desert. When people invite me to parties, I say no, and then show up anyway. I bring my cat dressed in a graphic t-shirt with an image of another, more attractive cat. I tell everyone I've just returned from my honeymoon, and when they ask to see pictures, I show them the cover of the 1855 edition of Leaves of Grass. I like kissing people I don't know, sending flowers to random addresses and signing the card, Love God. I'm a window cracked in the rain. My name is sitting down and standing back up for no reason. My motto is wings flapping. You should come back into my room if you miss me. I'll be there soon. I'm 1,000 miles away on a different bed. That's it.
Thank you, Melissa. Wonderful. And you're getting applause, even if you can't hear it.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to move on to Lisa, and
I
she should be
muted
unmuted at this point.
Yes. Thank you so much. I am going to end with some new work. I have been, I was invited to participate in a group of women poets who were trying to write a poem a day for National Poetry Month, which, if you know me, is not at all the way I normally produce work. And so it has been a challenge, but it has also been a great joy. And some of them are keepers, I think. So I'll read a couple of brand new works and then one more from the long grass. Near but not touching. I handed my friend 4 lemons today, our fingers near but not touching, the fruit from the bowl on my table, what she needed and I could give. Our fingers near but not touching, I met my friend in her driveway, what she needed I could give, and fruit passed between us. I met my friend in her driveway and we did not stand 6 feet apart as the fruit passed between us, a transgression we might regret. We did not stand 6 feet apart in the pandemic's 6th week, a transgression we might regret, a risk we were willing to take. In the pandemic's 6th week, we wait in long lines to visit empty stores, a risk some are willing to take, although everyone now wears masks. We wait in long lines to visit empty stores and buy without recipe or plan, although everyone now wears masks and duct tape marks where we should stand. I buy without recipe or plan. Too much fruit softens in a bowl. Duct tape marks where we should stand, but I hand my friend 4 lemons today. And the next poem, I don't think this is going to be the title, but I've been calling it Where Should We Begin? And it opens with a line from the New York Times a couple of weeks ago that said, people during times of prolonged radical change end up changing. I was hoping for a softening, an end to being cruel, my voice, my eyes, that my hands might keep their strength and the reckoning be just. If not ease, at least the shovel not always hitting stone, the rocks arranged into a path, the hold on my heart loosened just a notch, so that my home becomes a refuge, my marriage a garden, my garden a bower, lush and not overrun. Because if not peace, then oak, generous and branching, each year the last to bud. If not reprieve, then the cherry, finishing its bloom, petals like love letters to the gutters, the grass. If not love, then sorrow withdrawn, assuaged. If not blessing, then the bumblebee, drunk in the tulip's cup. And then one more from The Long Grass, Ron, thank you. A short one. And this is a poem I wrote for my friend Liz. Windfall. Even if all that's left is a harvest no one bothers to gather, wild apples softening in the brambled ditch of a 2-lane country road, bitter little fists pocked by coddling moths, dented and browning in the August sun, and the work seems thankless and lonely. Too much time rinsing and peeling, separating rot from flesh, and even if it feels impossible to find sweetness here, still, some people can and do. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Started talking and I got this message propped up on my screen, says, you are muted. So good technology. So we're going to move on to Cynthia here. So this is the third set. Following Cynthia will be Wendy, and Wendy will sort of bring us to the end of this session. I'll keep us online just for a while to see if anybody has any questions of any of the poets and artists. But Cynthia, I just unmuted you and you could start talking anytime.
Okay, well, thanks for y'all coming out tonight. I'm gonna read just one more poem, and this poem, I think of April and I think of Prince. He died, you know, the anniversary of his death just a week or so ago. One night, the same night that he died, I was out driving around as I do. That's kind of one of my pre-social distancing. I take a lot of drives, listen to music, and I happened to be driving past the laundromat and saw this beautiful woman inside folding her laundry and just dancing. And I felt like I had a real kinship and connection with her that night. So this is called A Goddess in Purple Rain. And thank you again for coming out. Thank you, Ron. You look like a DJ over there. I think you look pretty cool, and I like the suspenders too. A Goddess, and Melissa and Lisa, Wendy, just great words tonight. Very special. Thank you. A Goddess in Purple Rain. Behind glass, a lady is lit up inside the laundromat. She's folding sheets, pink curlers of Baroque in her hair, singing and creasing a t-shirt with sequins. Her arms and hips stretch out to a body of air, the room filling with sound. And I am humming inside her body, burning for shelter from the abyss of my alone. Rounding a corner in a car, I am passing by, hearing Purple Rain on the radio. I can almost taste the sweat on the brow of the boy I danced with so many years ago. It tasted like dry toast or the brunt of hurting. Listen to the sky imploring, come as you are, alone to the last concert, to light matches in a spellbound crowd. Remorse of loving a rock star we can never own. And now the lady in the laundromat is swaying, and I am swaying with her from my car. Maybe she is dancing with her son, going off to boot camp or the ends of the earth. I'm thinking of my son at 3, standing on the kitchen table in a wet diaper, banging music from a wooden spoon. This is that concert where you lit a match to your own bag of wounds. You felt like you belonged, a citizen, alive as a hackle of girls at the May prom. Look at the moon, hanging like a shoe to throw its heel of light on the page or an empty field. We are all in the body of this night, cogent as a judge who loves the law. The lady in the laundromat carries the load to her car, unpins her hair. I don't want to be alone tonight. The stars allow me to follow her. We are passing the town. Rooftops are hunkering down to sing lullabies to the young. And the night is a stranger touching my sleeve. Thank you all.
Everybody's clapping, nodding their heads, and wishing you good wishes. So I'm going to go on to Wendy here, and Wendy, you are unmuted.
Okay. Well, once again, I just have to thank you, Ron, for everything you've done and are doing. You're amazing, and we're all so grateful to you. And oh, what a joy to read with Lisa, Cynthia, Melissa. What a joy to read with you. I loved hearing you. This is so great. You know, I so often tell students, you know, we need each other's voices. Everyone's voice is so important, and I think now more than ever. So it's just a real joy and energy boost to hear your voices and your poems, and we just got to keep going, right? So two more poems. One is one of the scroll poems. How a surface can gleam in light, a crystalline slice, so you think you can avoid going under. And I'll close with one of the poems toward the end of the book, not the very end, but toward the end. Another prose poem called Gathering Bones. Gathering bones. Like a book, Mom said about life, you turn the page and go on. The same way she moved in and out of houses, garage sale after sale, each year like a chapter torn from a novel's spine and hurled. But some of us go back looking for patterns, the way a plot builds chapter upon chapter, like a pelvis resting on the femur, femur on the patella, on the tibia and fibula. That film I can't forget, Aftermath, story of a Catholic Polish farmer who discovers Jewish tombstones buried under the town's road. He's obsessed with digging them up, 5-foot rounded headstones, one by one. Doesn't know why. He plants them in rows, like corn, in his field. Learns Hebrew, reads the inscriptions, names and names. During the months before she died, when I begged her to talk about her childhood, my mother changed the subject, demanded more milk in her tea. Let sleeping dogs lie, the villagers, even the young priest, warned that farmer. Years ago, Mom told me about a nightmare. She was racing, breathless, through a walled labyrinthian garden to save herself from a gigantic man. How many houses had it taken to escape? New Jersey, Arizona, house after house, different towns, and finally, in less than a decade, 3 houses in New Hampshire, each one repainted. At the film's end, the farmer learns it was his father who'd led the villagers to a roundup of the local Jews, locking them in the family's cottage, which he set on fire. The night before the family's ceremonial scattering of Mom's ashes on the lake she loved, I slept with a canister beside me. Sunrise, I carried it down to the dock, opened the lid. I reached in, gathered a small handful, and over my arms and legs spread powdery flakes of crushed bone. I slipped then into the water that carried them, glittering in the light. Once I dreamed of myself as a toddler, walking down an unlit hospital hall with closed doors on both sides. I was holding my mother's hand, but no, she was gripping mine. Thank you all so much.
Nice.
Really wonderful.
I also want to thank all of you who have participated. There's some very special people here, and you know who you are, who I missed seeing you since last fall was over. And it's wonderful to see you now. So thank you for being with us tonight. All of you. And Ron, thanks again.
Thank you.
Leave the meeting?
Can't hear you, Ron.
I heard someone speaking in the background like they were asking a question, but I couldn't hear the question. It just didn't come through very clearly. Okay, I can't tell who that is. That being the case, I want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. We will probably do this again at some point with some other poets. And Melissa, do you have a plug you want to make for the event that's up and coming for your particular partnership?
Third on Saturday.
Yeah.
It's on my website. So if anybody wants to know how to get there and go, I think it's going to be a lot of fun, and you get to hear Chris's music. So I do recommend it.
Chris's music is indeed wondrous. And I put a link out there to his website. So if you scroll back up and take a look at some of the postings I made in the chat area for Christopher, say his last name for me, Melissa.
Theophanides.
Theophanides, okay. And there's a link there and you can learn a whole lot more about him. Oh, Chris is still with us, so I apologize.
You pronounced it very well, Melissa. That's good.
Yeah, I did it the American way. I can also do the Greek way if you want.
Okay.
Theophanides. I didn't get it quite right. I'm trying.
So let me thank everybody for joining us this evening, and just say, God bless, stay safe, and stay healthy.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you,
as
thank you.
well. Be well.
Thank you.
Thanks,
care.
thanks, thanks.
Good. It's great to see everybody in the flesh.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Cynthia.
Take
Bye,
care.
Ken and Jean. Thank you. Bye, Kirsten. Bye, Vicki.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, Melissa. I love you.
Love you. Bye.
Bye.
See you soon.
Bye, Katie.
Bye, Cynthia.
Bye,
Hi,
Vicki.
thanks for coming. You look great. Oh,
Bye,
it's so
Wendy. Thank you
you.
so much.
So good to be with you all.
Beautiful work. Thank you so
Beautiful
much.
work, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, amazing. So good to see you. Ron, thank you for putting this all together.
You're quite welcome.
Yes, yes.
Very
You guys
grateful.
are great. Thanks so much.
Very, very grateful.
Good
Vicki,
night.
I'll see you tomorrow.
Yep.
Bye.
Night.
Bye-bye.
Stay safe, everybody. Stay
Bye.
well. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks for
Good night,
coming,
good
you all.
Bye.
I got dressed for this reading. I hope you'll appreciate that.
We do. We appreciate that.
Good night.
Bye-bye.